What is up, people? Wanted to drop on, talk a little bit about some things that I've been thinking about lately and musing over as I journey to work, as I drive in the car along the same road at the same time, similar to the Batman from the 70s. It's got that very Groundhog Day reminiscence of same bat time, same bat channel. Rinse and repeat, do the same thing day in, day out. And I've been musing on that, thinking on that a little bit of late, and it's for the vast majority of us, that is exactly how we live our lives. And we don't question that, which I find quite interesting. And I've been questioning it of late. Don't know if it's because I'm now 45, officially. Maybe I'm having a midlife crisis. I'm not sure. I've got two young kids now, 2-year-old and a 4-month-old. So there's the potential that has amplified my thought process. I don't really know why. Sometimes we just have these thoughts of we go down a certain path, and we don't really, for me personally at least, I don't know why I'm going down that path, or there's not like a genuine trigger, if you get me. It's not like something has become inflamed, so you've had to look at a certain point in your life. I guess this is just something that for me personally has just crept up over time, and yeah, it's something that's at the forefront of my mind on an ongoing basis now. And so one of the things that the way I've been looking at it is very similar to the movie The Matrix. Now, I'm not going to say I think that we're in a simulation. I'm not going to say that I think we're in this world that is run by machines and robots, and we're only there as energy source or battery source, as they depict in the movie. I'm not going to say that. But what I'm going to say is the concept of the Matrix, I feel, is very similar. And what I mean by that is of how Neo plans to escape the Matrix, or he ends up escaping the Matrix, and obviously gets to the real world. And for me, the Matrix is the control that somebody, or that we hand over to other people. And we do it in many different aspects of our lives. We do it in relation to our health, we do it in relation to our food, we do it in relation to our jobs, we do it in relation to our schooling, our education. So for a lot of us, we've gone through this world somewhat oblivious or asleep to the fact that that's the way the world is run. So from early on in our childhood, we end up going to preschool or kindergarten, depending on what country you come from, daycare, and then you go to your infant school, or you go to your primary school, and then you spend 5 or 6 years there. Then you go to high school and you spend 5 or 6 years in high school, and then you're taught to go to university. Then you might spend anywhere from 4 to 5 years at university, depending on what you're doing. 6 or 7 years if you want to become a doctor, where they teach you, the way of medicine, or the way of healing, or the way of, protecting people. And, I've got my opinions on the medical system and how that works, and the training, and there's a lot of history. You can go back and have a look at the way medicine was taught 100 years ago versus how it's taught now, and you can have a look at where the change was and who implemented the change I should say. And it's like anything that I think about in this world is I always look at where is the money coming from. So whenever we look at what we want to achieve or what the goal is that we're looking for, it might be, let's just use university as an example. You know, and let's just use medicine as an example. You know, there was a certain way that was taught many years ago, and then that changed, and that changed to suit a certain narrative, and that change came about off the back of money. And it basically meant that, you know, if you wanted to get this money, this was the new way you taught medicine. And if you didn't want to teach medicine that way, or you didn't want to get the money, or you didn't want to teach medicine that way, then you could no longer essentially get a degree as a doctor. And that stems to, you know, that's generational. So, you know, we've been looking 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years or thereabouts. And now we're just in this world where we don't know where that began. And a lot of that is, it's not our fault, because it's just what our parents have taught us, what their parents have taught them, and so on. It becomes, once you get deep enough into the generations, there's often what happens is the history gets lost, and that's can be a potentially sad thing. And if you've tried to Google certain things now, and let's just use, you could use the history of raw milk. There was something I was Googling the other day, the fluoride in our water, the history of that. And a lot of the times when you're going on to Google, you cannot find accurate history. What you can find is history that is, well, modern history, so recent information that has been, I guess, paid for. And that was where I was alluding to in relation to the university system before. You know, and I think we can see that with our health. Health has become such a big business, and I'm talking about hospitalization. I'm not talking necessarily about emergency health, because I think emergency health has a really good place in our world. You know, if you're bleeding to death, you've got you know, a ruptured appendix or a broken leg or fractured skull, things like that, then emergency medicine is amazing, and the new technology that we've got is simply phenomenal. But when we look at health, I think that's where we lack the understanding and we lack the skills. And what we do, this comes back to the point I was making earlier about responsibility, is we pass on that responsibility to other people. And in this case, we pass them on to, in most cases, we pass them on to our GP, our local doctor, or, you know, whoever it might be. Taking radical responsibility, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is actually quite difficult to do, because what it means to take radical responsibility is, it means to have the weight of that decision on your own shoulders, and the failure of that rests with you. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you go to the doctor when you're sick and the doctor says, take this antibiotic, and look, antibiotics have done great things for the world, but they also do cause a lot of harm, and, you know, there's issues with gut bacteria and you know, microbiome and things like that, which I'm not going to go into now. But if you go to the doctor when you're sick and the doctor says, here, take this antibiotic, and you take the antibiotic and you go away and you get better, you've passed that responsibility onto the doctor. If for some reason you don't get better, then you can go back to him and say, you know, hey, it didn't work, or whatever the situation is. And the responsibility then falls on his shoulders, because maybe he gave you the wrong one, or, you know, we didn't diagnose you correctly, or whatever it might be. However, if you are not going to the doctors and therefore figuring out the solution yourself, and maybe that solution is healthy eating, maybe that solution is healthy drinking, you know, what food are we putting in our mouth, what water are we putting in our mouth, what food are we putting in our body, what water are we putting in our bodies, what are we doing with our bodies as far as movement goes, you know, things like that, then you'll end up taking a lot more responsibility. What vitamins and minerals are we consuming on a day-to-day basis, whether we're getting them from food, or whether we're getting them from naturally derived vitamins and things like that. So, and then if that doesn't work, then the responsibility falls back on you as an individual, and that can actually be quite scary, and particularly in a system that we're in where everything is conditioned into us over such a long period of time. You know, things like why raw milk is dangerous, things like, you know, you just need to get the COVID vaccine to save your grandma, you know, and then you get the pressure, and then you get the, you know, the mainstream narrative, you know, delivering this message, and it pumped through all of the radio channels and all the TV channels. And that's part of the way I look at the Matrix, is it's this overarching system of control that's designed to, in my personal opinion, it's not designed to make us thrive as human beings. I think it's probably in reality the reverse, because a lot of the time there's more money in people who don't thrive than there are in people who do. And if you become independent of the system, so you no longer require medical attention, you no longer require you know, money from the government, so you're financially independent. You don't rely on the government for handouts. You don't rely on the government for subsidies. In other words, you know, if you choose to send your child to daycare, you don't require the subsidies that the government give you. The more you rely on someone else, the more you hand over your control to that person, that individual, that group of people, that company, that organization, whoever it might be. And the less you are sovereign in your own right. In other words, the less you just have your own ability. You know, I read recently that they were looking at wanting people to start informing the government when you start to grow your own vegetables and you grow your own fruit, so they can track your carbon footprint for those particular products. I mean, that in itself should be just like fucking mind-blowing, because at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, that to me seems ridiculous. You know, so again, it comes down to control. You know, they don't want you being independent. You know, they don't want you being off-grid. They want you being part of the system. Being part of the system creates the money, and that creates the you know, gives them the ability for their ongoing control. And that's the way I look at it. So I don't look at the Matrix as, like I said before, I don't look at it as this, you know, futuristic robots and things like that. I mean, it could be, but, you know, look, the reality is we don't know. I don't know enough about it, but what I'm saying is, you know, that's not my point. My point is I'm just using the Matrix as a way to describe the system of control, from our schooling, from our health, from our jobs. You know, imagine a world where you're taught, and this is the world, so, you know, you're taught to fear all of these things that are naturally created in nature. So, you know, and that, like I said before, that's a generational thing. So if you're one of those people that say fears raw milk, that's cool, I understand that, because that's what we've been told. We've been told we need to homogenize our milk, we've been told we need to pasteurize our milk, but the reality of that is just not true. And it is very challenging to get information or data contrary to the mainstream opinion. One thing that I've recently been doing is, and I was having a conversation with a friend about this, is I'm starting to create my own individual library of information, physical books that I can hold and retain. So if in the future, you know, AI, I mean, we saw something recently where there was a bug and AI was recreating historical figures as black people. Now, that's probably just a coincidence. It's probably just a glitch in the system, or a glitch in the Matrix. But the reality is, right, like if you wanted to go down the fucking tinfoil hat route or the rabbit hole route, you could argue that if AI gets to the point that it will, which is, you know, it's going to consume our lives, it's already, you know, we're already using it so heavily with and without noticing. But if we go to the point where, say fast forward 20 years from now, and imagine a world where AI had replaced every single historical figure. Like, let's just say there was no books available, maybe the libraries had burnt down, maybe people just stopped carrying physical books because they thought there was no need for it anymore. So when you get onto Google and you say, hey Google, show me what George Washington looks like, and it brings you up a picture of a black person or a black George Washington, you as a child, a 7-year-old child doing a school examination, and potentially your mum and dad, if they're 3 or 4 or 5 generations separated, I'm talking 50, 60 years from now, 70 years, whatever, then that becomes the new normal. You know, that, and that normal is not factual, right? And that's the way I look at things like, and go back to just using that example of the raw milk and the fluoride. So what I'm doing is, me personally, is I'm building up a database of books that I can give to people, or I can share that information with people in relation to things like raw milk, fluoride in our water, vaccinations, you know, our education system, the university system, you know, things like that. So that way, you know, we know that books that were printed 40, 50, 60 years ago, you know, I mean, maybe they were printed recently, but they were written, you know, that far ago, you know, we've got a better chance of that information being the real information, or that information being the factual information. So that's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to be probably doing some more videos about the Matrix and my journey on the way out of the Matrix. I've got things in motion as we speak that I'm working towards, you know, and it might be 12, 18 months, could be 2 years potentially before I can get myself into a position to get out. But that's what I'm working on. So if, you know, that sort of thing is of interest to you, and you've gotten to the end of this conversation and thought, you know, there's validity in what I'm saying, or that I'm not a complete and utter crackpot, then yeah, guys, check out, you know, what's to come. You know, like and subscribe, as they say, and yeah, follow along for the journey. Check me out on Instagram as well. I drop a lot more daily content and things like that on there. And yeah, let's see if we can just bring awareness to some things that maybe we're not aware of. How's that sound? All right, guys. Anyway, I'm just about to get to my job. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with it. Hope you have a cracking week, and I will talk to you soon. Peace.